this slide just talks a little bit about what a positive relationship with food looks like. So obviously we want our kids to grow up healthy and happy, but there's more focus now, I suppose, on having a positive relationship with food, because unfortunately, many of us adults don't have a positive relationship with food. So, there's repeated dieting, it affects things like your body image, your confidence, all these things. Food should not be negative. End of story. And if people don't really enjoy food, we'll say, and I love my food, I really look forward to eating and cooking and all this. And that's, everyone doesn't have to be the same, but it should be at least neutral, but it should not be negative. We don't want to, create this kind of negative relationship with food or foster it. So what are we looking at in terms of what a positive relationship with food looks like? So again, it's about children listening to their bodies. So this idea of intuitive eating. So, that we know our children know when they're hungry and they eat, and they know when they're getting more full or satisfied, they can stop eating. So you can even tell your, children about this depending on their age. But I think a good way of explaining it is this. So if we start eating and we're not really that hungry, well, then how do we know when to stop? So usually the theory is ideally we start eating when we're hungry, and then, our body is registering, and our brain and all that, our stomach's getting more full, we're more satisfied, so we're not hungry anymore, and we're not as motivated to keep eating. But if we start when we're not hungry, then are we still kind of processing some of the food that we've had already, or if we're full and we're trying to eat more, it's kind of going against our body. So we should kind of process the food we have, and then, so leave a certain amount of time between eating, and then, develop an appetite to eat again. So of course, the key, I suppose, of a positive relationship with food is about eating and enjoying a variety of growing foods. So I talk about growing foods for growing bodies. So most of our children want to grow bigger, stronger, faster, become an adult. A lot of them can't wait to become an adult and, to become more mature and, get more, freedom and all this. So it's important that our children, are fueled with growing foods. So the growing foods basically give us superpowers or fuel or power, whatever you'd like to say, to fuel this growing body. So the idea is that our children generally eat growing foods. Now, of course, there are other foods as well we eat, like sweets. I'm not against that. There needs to be a balance. So mostly growing foods, and then sometimes, we're eating other foods like the sweets and the lollies. It's about a balance, really. We don't want to restrict our children, because all the research will say that's not a good idea, and I've seen the effects of that. So it's about, a little bit of what you like, and it's loads of these growing foods so that we can fuel our growing body. So when I talked there about a balance, what does that mean? So I think this is a really nice little visual. You probably have heard loads before about, a food pyramid and certain amount of portions of food every day. It can get, a little bit hard to keep track of. So this is just the idea of, they call it a kid's healthy eating plate. It came from Harvard University, but I like to call it a balanced plate. So per meal, we can look at, do we have a number of components? Do we have a healthy protein? Do we have some whole grains ideally? And do we have some fruit or veg? So it's kind of, let's say, the idea of the traditional Irish dinner. You'd have meat or fish or chicken, whatever. So you'd have your protein, your potatoes, and you'd have some veg. So the idea is that, a balanced plate or a healthy meal isn't just a bowl of pasta. It's not just one food. We need a variety of foods to kind of, fuel this growing body. And water should be the main drink, rather than sweetened drinks, like even diluted juice, or even, those concentrated squashes like my wedding, because the more we offer the sweetened drinks, the less, our children want water, or they're willing to accept it because it's seen then as too boring, it's too bland, it's too, it's not sweet if they get used of having a sweet drink regularly. So why is it important to have a balanced plate? Again, it comes back to this blood sugar roller coaster. So this is like the slide I had before. So if we keep within the blue area of the sugar in our blood, it gives better mood, better attention, better energy, rather than going into the red area where our blood sugar levels are so low, and that affects energy, affects mood, attention. So we all are familiar, for probably ourselves and definitely in our children, this idea of, hangry. We have, they've got so hungry, or the blood sugar levels have gone so low that they get angry, or whatever negative word you'd like to use. So ideally, we keep within, as I said, the blue zone, because otherwise, I suppose, we're stressing our body. If, it's not getting fuel regularly enough, our body's kind of stressed out, and we don't want to be in that situation, and we don't want our children to be in that situation too often. And this is, again, another nice visual. So the last one there on the kids' healthy eating plate is something you could print out and put it up in your kitchen, just to remind us, we need a number of elements, and what is kind of a balanced plate. And this is also a nice visual. Eat the Rainbow, again from Harvard. So it just focuses on fruit and veg, but it gives the idea that we need a variety. And again, why do we need the variety? It's because if we eat only a few foods, we can get very tired of them. And so can our kids, and stop eating them. And also, eating a variety means that our children they're more likely to get all the nutrients they need. So I think recent research would say there's 38 essential nutrients needed, for bodies, and probably more so for growing bodies. So this visual is kind of, a printout you could, as I said, put in your kitchen, and it just reminds us that sometimes we focus maybe a lot on one or two colors, and we kind of neglect other ones. So, can we introduce more color or more variety within that color? Really, variety is the spice of life. So I'll just go through some general questions I get very quickly, and then we'll have our Q&A. So is hunger a solution to better eating? Yes and no. So basically, we don't want our children to be hungry, like I mentioned, where they've kind of gone too hungry, but some children never feel hungry. They may be frequently snacking, so they're never hungry for meal times. So the aim is that our children do develop a little hunger, and, they're ready then to eat a meal. Hiding veggies, yes or no? So we all, I suppose, would hide veggies at times. If you're making a tomato sauce or spaghetti bolognese, you cook up the onions and you may blend them through the tomato sauce before you serve it. But I suppose the problem with hiding veg is if we do it very often. Now, some parents will say, I can't get my kids to eat veg or whatever food if it's not totally camouflaged. But those children will never see what that veg or fruit, can also apply to that, what it looks like. What does it taste like? What does it feel like, the texture of it? So really, we need to get our children on board with what different veg and fruit in some cases are like. Because usually, as an adult, we don't have all our veg hidden. We see our veg, as part of the stew or part of the stir fry, or, on the side. So our aim should be to get our children on board with the veg and fruit in our house, so they get familiar with them. Concerns about weight is something that parents would talk to me about or approach me about. Either they're afraid their children are underweight, or that they have difficulty putting on weight, or that they're overweight, or will maybe go that way if in time, if their habit or if their eating continues. So I would not recommend focusing exclusively on weight. It's a very narrow thing, I think. We'll say, if you just focus on the number on scales. Instead, I would take a broader approach, more holistic approach, and I would help parents and help children to have more healthy eating habits. So having the regular meal times, eating breakfast, eating a balanced plate, not frequently snacking, these kind of habits then should help, I suppose, correct weight, because children are growing, so they have an opportunity to change more than us as adults. So focusing on healthy eating habits is also more positive than focusing on weight and kind of saying, certain foods are bad or they're high in fat, or, you can't have them as much or whatever. So it's a more positive approach and it's more holistic. And lastly, rewards. Should we reward children for eating food? So the idea, or an example here would be, if, we want to get our kids to eat veg or eat a certain amount of dinner or whatever, that we might say to them, you can have a biscuit if you finish your dinner, or eat your veg or whatever. So I suppose the problem with that is that the children can get very focused on the end point. The biscuit or whatever we're offering is already attractive enough. We don't have to sell it anymore. And then also, I suppose, you're comparing one food against another, and the veg or whatever you're offering first is looking worse compared to the biscuit. And the research would show that, yes, children may eat food like that, like the veg, to get the biscuit, but long term it doesn't help their perception of that food, like the broccoli. So they might eat it and go, oh, this is so gross, but I get the biscuit now. So really rewarding children, with foods, and especially, like biscuits and stuff, isn't really the best idea in practice.